So we are very, very, very excited to welcome you all to tonight's talk. I want to first and foremost, I want to say hello to everyone. Thank you and welcome for the third installment of the Race and Revolution lecture series. Tonight's speaker is an incredibly exciting one and a veteran of our own Bard community. Tonight we have the illustrious Bill T. Jones, who is artistic director and co-founder / choreographer of the Bill T. Jones Arnie Zane Company, and is the associate artist of the 2020 Holland Festival and recipient of the 2014 Doris Duke Performing Artist Award and 2013 National Medal of Arts, 2010 Kennedy Center Awards, a 2010 Tony Award for Best Choreographer of the critically acclaimed Gila, a 2007 Tony Award, a 2007 Obie Award, a 2006 Stage Directors and Choreographers Foundation Award for his choreography in Spring Awakening, the 2010 Jacobs Pillow Dance Award, the 2007 USA Eileen Harris Norton Fellowship, the 2006 Lucille Lortle Award for Outstanding Choreography for the Seven, the 2005 Wexner Prize, the 2005 Samuel H. Scripps American Dance Festival Award for Lifetime Achievement, the 2005 Harlem Renaissance Award, the 2003 Dorothy and Lillian Gish Prize, and the 1994 MacArthur Genius Award. Mouthful. In 2010, Mr. Jones was recognized as Officier de l'Ordre des Arts et Lettres, in the French government. And in 2000, the Dance Heritage Coalition named Mr. Jones an irreplaceable dance treasure. Mr. Jones choreographed and performed worldwide with his late partner, Arnie Zane, before forming the Bill T. Jones Arnie Zane Dance Company in 1982. He has created more than 140 works for this company, and Mr. Jones is the artistic director of New York Live Arts, an organization that strives to create a robust framework in support of the nation's dance and movement-based artists through new approaches to producing, presenting, and educating. For more information, and we'll probably put this in the chat as well, you can find more information at www.newyorklivearts.org. And I implore you to check out their Go Vote wall in front of the physical building. And yes, so alongside our incredible speaker, we have our own Roger Berkowitz, who, I'll try to go shorter on this one, is the founder and academic director of the Hannah Arendt Center and professor of politics, philosophy, and human rights here at Bard College. Roger tends to write and speak about how justice is made present in the world. He's the author of The Gift of Science, Leibniz and Modern Legal Tradition, co-editor of Artifacts of Thinking, reading Hannah Arendt's lo siento, book in 2017, Thinking in Dark Times in 2010, and The Intellectual Origins of Global Financial Crisis in 2012. And of course is the editor of the annual journal, the HA Journal of Hannah Arendt Center. This is not Roger and Bill's first time speaking. They have a great relationship and have also done multiple speaking engagements here at Bard. In particular, Bill and Roger have done a talk more recently in conjunction with the Bill T. Jones Dance Company's live performance Dora, in which I implore you to go look at the recording. Bill and Roger do a wonderful dance together. And I hope you enjoy today's talk. I think it's set up to be incredibly interesting. So without further ado, will you both like to take it away?
Thank you, Sky. I appreciate it. And Bill, welcome. I'm thrilled to have you here again at the Arendt Center. I know you wanted to open up with something you wanted to read before we started. So I'm going to let you jump right into that, and then we'll have the conversation following that. Go for it.
Well, I'll frame it, Roger. I have been, 2 weeks ago, we had a board meeting, a distance board meeting. I have a wonderful board. And the company is doing well. New York Live Arts is doing well. But of course, we've been in shutdown for a while. And one of our board members, Janet Wong, who is my associate artistic director, was doing the artistic report, and she was going down all the things that we're doing, many of them digital. There were things that are happening in front of in the lobby and so on. And she mentioned Charlotte Brathwaite, a very exciting choreographer, activist, who I believe we're doing a work in collaboration with the Fisher Center up there. And one of the things in this, I don't think I understand it so well, but she has a team of very young people. These are pre-voting age people, people of color. And one of their projects is, I don't know how it works, they have a list of demands that they are coming up with. So when she was reading this, she mentioned that the list of demands. One of our board members said, what was that word you used? Demands. And this board member is a philanthropist, very progressive. She and her husband are dealing with these things. She said to me, you know, if I was younger, I would be down marching in Atlanta right now, or I'd be somewhere. But she, like many of us who've reached a certain age, cannot. But she was concerned about this use of demand. And she said there was something that the language of the last, I don't remember what she was saying. Was it the last 6 months? Was it since George Floyd? The language has become such that I think she was speaking for herself. Many people like herself are dismayed. It feels aggressive. She didn't say that, but what bothered her about demand? And so the board meeting turned into a really truth-telling session. We're planning a anti-racism workshop. All these things, lately I have felt like we fall into a cliche of a progressive liberal arts organization. The board is primarily white people. We're very proud to have, I think, 2, soon to be 3 Black persons on this board. We are the leadership. I am the artistic director. I'm a Black man. My associate is a Chinese woman. But you know, we've been really working very hard to diversify. So when I came upon this article, that is a kind of a history lesson. Those of you who read the New York Review of Books will probably have already read it. If you haven't, I really recommend you read it tonight. It's The Wages of Whiteness by Hari Kunzru. And it's a kind of a history lesson. It starts with the Brinks robbery in the 1970s. I live near Nyack, New York, where weather people, weathermen and women, were involved in a shootout with the police where people died. A woman spent 29 years in jail, a liberal white woman, because she was at the service of a third world revolutionary movement and so on. He goes through the SNCC and when SNCC was, John Lewis's position was taken over by Stokely Carmichael or Kwame Ture. And then he says, outside of the library, it is clear that since the Ferguson Uprising of 2014, we have been living through the most sustained and broadly supported civil rights movement since the 1960s. You know, when my dancers told me, my performers this year, we were on the lockdown, but we were having weekly meetings, and George Floyd was killed. I just glazed over in a way, because how many men have been killed? But they were saying, this is different, this is different. And even in the midst of COVID, people were out every night demonstrating. And I said to them, somewhat cynically, and you know, as older people tend to do with younger people, I said, you know, this is just another paroxysm of the ever-present desire for social justice. And I said, do you know the disco song, Burn, Baby, Burn, Disco Inferno? I said, you know what Burn, Baby, Burn was? That was Newark burning. That was a country on fire with racial protests. And little did you know, within 2 years, it's a disco song. I said, it'll all blow over. It'll blow over. And they were saying, no, this is different. And one of the reasons they said it's different, look at the demographics, look at the people in the street. And there were a lot of young white people, and as he mentions here, oftentimes young white people put themselves first as a barrier between the police and the Black protesters, the allyship. So he goes through the terminology like allyship comes from the 1960s and so on. But the part that I wanted to dig down into, not dig down to, but I think it's provocative because of the language and because of it's just the origin of this notion of intersectionality, which I think might be pertinent to our discussion about what we mean by revolution. Notably, it is a movement initiated and led largely by Black women, operating in a theoretical tradition derived from the work of Black women. In its focus on dismantling the machinery of policing and incarceration, it is abolitionist, drawing on the perspective of contemporary activists such as Ruth Wilson Gilmore and Mariam Kaba. One part of the program of the Movement for Black Lives, the organization that grew from the work of Patrisse Cullors, Opal Pametti, and Alicia Garza, states that, quote, "We believe in centering the experiences and leadership of the most marginalized Black people, including but not limited to those who are trans and queer, women and femmes, currently and formerly incarcerated, immigrants, disabled, working class, and poor," end quote. The identification of the wretched of the earth as the revolutionary vanguard is as old as the sans-culotte, but in this specific form, it's a position originally outlined by the Combahee River Collective, CRC, a radical Black feminist group formed in 1974 from the Boston chapter of the National Black Feminist Organization. Disillusioned with a Black nationalist scene marked by extreme misogyny and alienated by white feminist groups that did not see racism as a priority, the CRC named itself after the site of an 1863 raid led by Harriet Tubman that freed 750 slaves. Its influential political statement has recently been made widely available in How We Got Free, Black Feminism and the Combahee River Collective, edited by Kinaga Yamahata Taylor. The CRC made the claim that experiences of Black women and Black lesbians in particular could be a kind of an index of the success of liberation movements more widely. Quote, "We might use our position at the bottom," they wrote, "to make a clear leap for revolutionary action. If Black women were free, it would mean that everyone else would have to be free, since our freedom would necessitate the destruction of all the systems of oppression." This was so because the, quote, "major systems of oppression are interlocking, and queer Black women's position at the intersection of these systems, racism, patriarchy, heterosexism, and capitalism, meant that their liberation could not be accomplished except by overcoming all of them." And that's just one strand in this article. History, and as I say, New York Live Arts, we like to think of ourselves as a progressive organization that represents a community of artist makers, oftentimes artist maker activists. And I have been feeling lately exhausted with what we've been through the last few years with Black Lives Matter as a idea that has galvanized the 24-hour news cycle, and what's more, and also books like White Fragility, and the ongoing conversation about the desire to, quote, take stock of the true American history. And then there's the other, which is this dismantling of capitalism and so on. I've been thinking, how does one say percussively something like "we shall overcome now," or "free at last now"? So because I'm a theater person, I've been looking for something, and that little bit that I read you right now gives you a sense, gives us a sense, gives me a sense of just how broad and how ever moving this moment is that we're in. And how do we take it down to some, not a slogan, although slogans, they have their places, but that's what I'm struggling with, and that's why this article appeals to me. So here I am tonight on something that deals with race and revolution.
So Bill, thank you for reading that, and it's a great essay, and it's one that I've actually been working with a number of my students on. And as you said, it's a history lesson of sorts, and it talks about the turn away from the idea of the white and black working classes uniting, right, towards first black nationalism, then to, as you said, the Combahee River Collective, and the move towards what is they call intersectionality, or what they called it identity politics. Um, the essay then actually goes on, though, to raise a question about to what extent identity politics, you know, is a kind of extreme relativism, but I think more so is a kind of, as the as Kunzuru suggests, potentially a lifestyle or wellness or human potential message that has transformed into consumer culture, right? This is a critique that he offers it. He I mean, I'm not saying he says this, you know, he's what I love about this article is he raises lots of ideas and then moves on and then raises another one. But you said, you know, you there's a desire to embrace an identity here, not as not on an economic level, not as a Marxist level, but as an identity. And
well, no, did I say identity?
well, that's what I mean. That's what I Kunzru.
Yeah, that's one thing. But imagine from the point institutional position that I'm in. I have a theater. I have a place that is in New York. As you know, the art world is very much into various cliques and scenes. We have this space that that I did my first shows in 1970. Is now I'm running it with Kim Cullen, Janet Wong, Kyle Maud, David Archuleta, this whole team of people. But we have to have a brand. I know that's a crass term, but I'm looking for a brand. What, and does the brand reflect this level of discourse? It's not like we shall overcome or we the people. How do you talk about this complexity? And I thought that that's what was facing me tonight, and coming and saying something cogent about radical change, which is what I take revolution to be.
Yeah, so let me ask the question this way, and I'll set up a little bit how we frame the question in this lecture series, which is, as you know, because you're a deep and longtime reader of Hannah Arendt, Hannah Arendt writes a fair bit about revolution, and what she says in different places is that there's a difference between liberation and revolution. Liberation is throwing off the chains, but revolution is actually establishing a world of freedom. And to throw off the chains can leave you in an awful situation. It doesn't mean that you've established a new world of freedom. And writing in the 1960s with a lot of would-be revolutionaries in the streets, she says numerous times, the problem with modern revolutionaries is they know what they're fighting against, but they don't know what they're fighting for. I take the point to be, they know they're fighting against oppression, they know they're fighting against corruption, but they don't yet know what the new system is. You know, if you're fighting against liberal constitutionalism, what is the new thing to replace it? And you know, because over the summer, Sky and I and some others were in conversations about this, you know, like you, I didn't cite Burn Baby Burn because I'm not a performer, but I cited Hannah Arendt, and I said, is there going to be a vision that comes out of this movement? Is there going to be some, you know, I see two opposing visions vying for control of this Black Lives Matter movement. One is the older one, Martin Luther King, a version of post-racialism or integration. And the other is this sort of newer version of race consciousness and identity, a strong racial identity. And I think as as somewhat of someone looking at this to some degree from the outside, I see a lot of disagreement. I see a lot of uncertainty. And I think that there's not a lot, I think there's a lot of agreement of the critique of post-racialism or of integration, but I don't think there's an embrace yet on a larger cultural level of race consciousness as a way to build a new world of freedom.
And Roger,
yeah.
Thank you, but I'm gonna pull you back from the erudition of the great scholar that you are, and I think we agreed at this. I'm an artist. I'm not a politician. I'm not a scientist. I'm an artist, and it deals with feeling states, psychology, and what have you. There's a couple of anecdotal things that I'd like to say. When Arnie Zane and I arrived in New York before the 80s, in the late 70s, and there was a groovy downtown, places like the Kitchen and so on and so forth. And I remember seeing one night a group, I don't remember what they were, but everything was retro, 60s retro, and extremely ironic. Everything was ironic. And I remember saying to a friend of mine, yes, I see what they're doing, but what would they die for? Now, in What Would They Die For, it's a more clumsy, brute way of saying what I think Hannah Arendt is saying. What's the program?
Yeah.
You know? And but for me, and this is, I don't know, maybe I'm not of use to you and your students, but I'm going to talk tonight very much to people, individuals, and their hearts. Now, you've heard me say this, and and it started when Arnie Zane, my Jewish Italian companion, before we were able to be husbands, helped me found the company and died a very painful death of AIDS-related complications in 1988. Everything exploded for me because everybody wanted to talk to a real live person who is dealing with HIV/AIDS. So all the news, they want to interview me and everything about that. It was a difficult time, but it was also, which is my point about how it got real. Because when we went to Europe, they were saying, looking at you and you're a Black man, and you are known for making political work. And I said, well, my work is called identity-based work because the who and the what of who I am informs what the work is. It's my poetry. And they said, well, Mr. Jones, tell us, what should an artist do? What should? Now, this is a question. Looking for a program, right? And I said, an artist should be the freest of any society. Sometimes running literally naked through the streets, thumbing their nose at all received wisdom, left, right, even center. Don't tell me. Okay, an artist then is a person. This is the part that my lesbian therapist, Frida Ray Rosen, may she rest in peace. Some people called her organization Trotskyists, but she was definitely a socialist. And she said that an artist is a person, a man, a woman, a trans person. And that person has a location in the society. They have a checkbook or not. They're born in a certain place. And that person, and this is what the personal agency has become so important to me. They said, what does that person that the artist is need to do? So Miss Hannah Arendt, as much as I love her, it's very difficult today to paint on such a large scale without becoming a bit ridiculous and like Hollywood. How do you get people to, quote, do that precious thing, change from the inside? Now, it's easy to say, isn't it? How do we really get people to really change? Now, I don't think that's possible. So does that mean I don't believe in revolution? I don't think that the majority of us, I know I shouldn't be driving the car I'm driving. I know I shouldn't eat meat. I know I should. There's so much I know about the world around me that I shouldn't be doing, but is it changing my behavior? So I hope I'm useful to this talk, but the talk has got to get real. Can people, when we're involved in these conversations, really speak from some specific place? Now, I know that you don't want a person like me running for your president, and you certain as hell don't want to lay under my knife if I'm a surgeon and I have such a subjective view of the world. You want me to have the best information and so on. But no, I'm not that. And I think most people are not that. The revolution has got to come from some other place. The change has got to come, and it is coming all the time. Now, does that sound like so much sophistry? Well, beat me up a little bit if you want it to be a little more hard-edged than that.
Let me beat you up with kid gloves. You said change comes from the inside, and you said you don't think people change.
Mm-hmm.
As an artist, is there change that happens through the artistic process? A, and B, can art be revolutionary? And by this I mean, and you and I have talked about this, in many ways, after the laws change, right? We get the politicians and the laws change. So much of what it seems is holding us back on matters of race and other matters today is consciousnness, is feeling, is not understanding, as you said, the location of other people in the streets, right? You know, I teach at Bard College. Are there laws at Bard College or regulations that are racist? I'm not going to say none. I don't know, but I don't think that's the problem.
But Robbie, what I did say was everyone has a social location.
Yeah.
We all have, yeah, that's what I meant. Now, your neighborhood now almost is a location, I agree. But what I was trying to get at, we have a social location we have to acknowledge. So the feeling state you're trying to get to. Can
art push us? Can art change our feelings or make us aware of feelings in a way that changes us from the inside, as you said?
Mm-hmm. Does art have the same power that falling in love does? That's how I look at it. What's one of the most powerful experiences we can have that really changes us? And that is something about love. Now, we talked today about James Baldwin finishing, I believe, The Fire Next Time with saying that the world needs love. And Hannah Arendt writing back and saying that she thinks love is a problematic idea in politics. What he really meant was, or he should mean, is respect, not love. Love, respect we want, definitely. Everyone wants respect, but love is more dangerous. Love is more, if you really listen to what love is, it is more radical. And is it love of what? Usually it's love of self. But then is there something, some place, like for instance, what would you die for? Is that the same thing as saying, what do you love so much that you would lay down your life for it? I say free speech. Yes, I say the right to marry the man I married. I say to have a society that allows me to do this esoteric thing called contemporary dance and find an audience for it. Yeah, kind of puny, isn't it? I should say global warming, solution to global warming, a solution to sex trafficking, a solution to, but you see where I go to those very kind of prosaic things that I can feel and touch. That's what I mean, Roger. We get so pompous when we talk about big change, big change. And we haven't really done the work to justify even considering ourselves able to do big change. Now, yeah, please.
You said, and this is something I've heard you say a number of times, and it's something I love, dear to my heart, that the artist is the freest person in society, that they have to speak truth to, I guess, power, but also speak truth to their friends, right?
And to themselves.
And to themselves. Is it possible today in New York City to be free as an artist in a world in which there is such criticism of people who say things that are thought to be wrong. Can you feel free as an artist now in the as much freer or less free as you did in the 60s, in the 80s, in the 90s?
My young dancers used to ask me that about how much freedom, and I said, well, you can have as much freedom as you're willing to pay for. And I think that's even true now. And that's why art making is a terrifying proposition. Yeah, I don't know if, and I think here we need this Hannah Arendt to come in there. What about being conditioned? Isn't that part of the human condition, that we don't have freedom? And I think that's a very important one to get over when you're a young artist, to realize that no, you cannot jump and jump and jump and fly, or that you want to bring down capitalism tomorrow, or that you want to live off the grid, or that you want to eat a diet that is only plant-based and you live in Manhattan. Those sort of things are, once you understand that as an artist, then it gets more interesting. And I always misquote Stravinsky, who says something about restraints on his creativity. The greater the restraints on my creativity, the greater the resourcefulness needed for me to solve the problems that come up with it. Now, that's what artists should do. Now, and once again, the idea that you're going to be able to, like I say, run naked in the middle of the street thumbing your nose, you can do that too. You can do that too. Are you willing to pay for it? Are you willing to pay for it? No, I'm telling you, seriously, when I stood on stage in the late 70s and 80s, and I'm talking about being in a room full of white people and talking to them, telling them my story, and oftentimes a real heavy load of anger coming off that stage, belligerence. I want their hair to go back, you know? There was a piece I did, the ADF. On one side of the stage, I said, I love white people. And I walked the other side, I hate white people. I love women. I hate women. I love, and that was the whole piece, back and forth, and try to put as much of real emotion behind each side of that stage. So is it possible to be really free right now? Unfortunately, Roger, you know, we have a problem with, we have so much freedom. I mean, in terms of aesthetic freedom, and almost people don't care. Who cares? You know, such and such is going, tonight I'm going to set myself on fire on stage. Well, yeah. And then tomorrow, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
No, so the art world is not going to help us with this idea, are we more free? You can have as much freedom as you're willing to pay for. And that's always the case. Isn't that what Hannah Arendt was saying about, yes, we live in a revolutionary situation, and all the markers say that in the past, that situation turned into revolution. But she said, every moment is unprecedented. Which means what, Roger? Because artists feel that very much. What does it mean, every moment is unprecedented?
It means that there's, at every moment, you know, there's freedom. And that freedom can lead to being taken up and something new being brought in the world, or we can run away from that freedom and we can keep doing the same things we've been doing ad infinitum.
Mm-hmm.
And at every moment there's that possibility. And the hardest thing to do is to take up that freedom. It seems like the obvious thing to do. And yet she says the easiest thing to do is to have freedom there ready to be picked up and to walk away from it. Because picking it up is hard on a lot of levels. It requires, as you said, changing yourself. But it also requires, and this is her view, and I wonder, this is actually something else you and I have had danced around for the last couple months of our conversations, Bill. It requires picking up the freedom in such a way that you build a common world with other people, including people you disagree with, right? And as I've tried to express this, and I've tried to say, we've talked to people on the left and right, you've said things to me like, I don't believe in an equivalence. And I don't think I'm suggesting there's an equivalence. I don't know what the equivalence would be, but it does seem to me that from reading Arendt and my own thinking, if you're going to pick up the freedom, if you're going to change yourself in a way that's going to change the world, you've got to bring other people along with you, and you've got to understand your limits as well as their limits. And I think you agree with that.
Well, Roger, but it's all in a timeline, isn't it? Now, excuse me, all my gay brothers and sisters on the phone call. Do you know the story the way Stonewall is told, right? I had heard back in the day that Stonewall was when all of the sissies, the men, the femmes, they were every night harassed by the police, all from on the pay of the mafia. And that night, the police were going to empty the place, and people went out into the street. But I heard it was the black femmes who said, "Hell no," and picked up stone and started fighting the police. Now that's a moment. That's a moment. There is a moment when you've got to go out on a limb. 1, 2, small groups. So we can't be sure always that we have the common world. Now that's the other part of it. And how does Ms. Hannah refer to that? I mean, there is a moment when you are really, it's spontaneous. Somebody says, "Hell no." Yeah, that's the way I roll. That's the way I roll. And you know the moment when you say, "Hell no, I'm not going to do it." And let the papers deal with it tomorrow. Let the politicians deal with it tomorrow. And that's what I think we want to say about revolution, right? There is a moment when individuals make choices. Artists do it all the time. And you've got to, you set something in play. Is that what, you know what I'm getting at, Roger?
Yeah.
It isn't, I respect that we want to live in a place where, quote, rule of law is understood, that everyone understands there is a we. My last work, Deep Blue Sea, the one that was canceled because of COVID, that will be restaged next year at the Armory in the fall, or this coming fall, next fall, it was asking the question, is there a we?
Yeah.
I felt so betrayed by "we shall overcome" and "we the people." And I was thinking a radical thing for me to do was to say that, no, I don't believe there is a we. And you and I were talking today about, can there ever be a we? I really have a difficult time imagining black and white people, average black and white people, really being able to be together. Now, we talked about that today. That's a tough one for me, since I've always lived, when my dad decided to be a black Yankee and moved us from the South to pick potatoes in the Finger Lakes region. I went K through 12 with German, Italian kids, and that came along in the 60s. I always believed that, I know it didn't really feel comfortable, but if I just stay at this long enough, it's going to become reality. Now, I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, I hear that from you, and I hear it from a lot of people. And when you say you don't know, you don't maybe think black and white people can live in a common we. And yet you have lived with close friends and partners and collaborators who are white. So can you just tell me a little bit more what you mean by black and white can't live in a common we?
Well, you're absolutely right. And thank you for calling me on that. But there's always been this gnawing feeling of inauthenticity, that you're actually a liar, and that and we don't even have to use the word token anymore, do we? No. I mean, we're all so woke now, we don't use it anymore. But I mean, when it's happening, right? Like I'm looking at the screen right now and I'm doing racial looking, right? And I'm going to flip through and look. I'm going to flip through again and look. Hey, Isis, how you doing? I'm my sister. And I'm flipping through, I'm doing racial looking. Okay, well, cruel little game, isn't it? A cruel game. But no, you're right. My husband is was born in Haifa. His mother is French. My Arnie Zane was Italian and Jewish. His father converted to Judaism. My other companion, Arthur Aviles, is what he himself described as a white Puerto Rican. So yeah, on one level, no. But you know what? I think, how does the great beat poet Frank O'Hara say? The only truth is face to face. Now, is that politics though? If everything has to be on that level of individual encounter, I can get to know you. I can, and particularly, you know, the bathhouses for gay men, right? You could, like in an evening, 5 different people you could find yourself laying in post-coital bliss with. And there comes a moment where, yes, their differences attracted you, but at that moment, when all of that is over and you're just a pile of humanity lying there sweating and quivering with each other, oh, I've had that experience too.
This brings us, and this is gonna be the last sort of question you and I, then I'm gonna open up for questions. But this brings us back to the question of love and the Baldwin Arendt discussion about love that you referenced earlier. So when Arendt read the essays on which The Fire Next Time was based in the New Yorker, she wrote to Baldwin, who she knew, and she wrote, you know, that his article was an event in understanding. And for those of you who've been in the virtual reading group know that for Arendt to say something is an event in understanding is at the very highest sense of her idea of what a compliment can be. But she says, because the question you raise is one which concerns us all, and thus, you know, the we, right? She said, I feel entitled to raise objections. And she then says, what frightened me in your essay was the gospel of love, which you began to preach at the end. In politics, love is a stranger. And when it intrudes upon politics, nothing is being achieved except hypocrisy. All characteristics you stress in the Negro people, their beauty, their capacity for joy, their warmth, and their humanity, are well-known characteristics of all oppressed peoples. They grow out of suffering, and they are the proud possession of all pariahs. And of course, she's thinking about Jews here. Unfortunately, and here's the key line, these characteristics of oppressed people have never survived the hour of liberation by even 5 minutes. Hatred and love belong together, and they are both destructive. You can afford them only in the private and as a people, only so long as you are not free. I mean, so love and hatred go together, they are destructive, and you can't be free when you are consumed by love and hatred. For her,
I wonder, did anyone ever talk to Hannah Arendt after making love? No, and I know it, yeah, but literally, when she was like poleaxed by passion and all of this, and it all left that brilliant mind and went into her body, right? You know, did anyone ever get her on the microphone to talk about these big, lofty ideas when she was a satisfied animal?
I love when you do this, Bill.
That's what we're talking about, right? I don't claim to be a scholar. I don't claim to be a politician. This is how I roll as a creator.
Yeah.
Right? So I hear what she says, and I know it, but I'm not sure what is the real world. You know, what is the real world? I remember asking someone from the Bloomberg Foundation, we were trying to get a grant, and I was being provocative. I said, are the arts as important as highways and hospitals? It stopped a lot of funders. Like, oh, wow, that's very profound. And she said, well, maybe it's more important. And I thought, oh, that was a little too far. Because how could anything be more important than highways and hospitals? So let's say art equals the act of loving, the messiness of human interaction on a psychological level. Is there anything more important than that? And that's what you call, and Hannah is saying, it only exists when people are not free. This thing that is so important. I don't know about that, Roger. I don't know about that, Ms. Hannah Arendt. You know?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, what she says is freedom
is living together with others in public, right? And that's
Is that what it is? Is that, I've heard so many, she said so many profound things about what freedom
is action. Freedom, she calls acting in concert. So you're free when you act together with other. When you're loving, you're private, you're alone, and it's a shattering experience, but it's also a brilliant experience. But it's not freedom in the sense of being with others in a public sphere. And so what she's trying to say, as I understand it, and let me say this is difficult for me too, is that to be free, we have to create a we, and we have to not think about the kinds of intense feelings like love in the public sphere. We have to respect, we have to be friends. Freedom can't, if freedom in a political sense means, as our mutual friend, Mr. Kenyon Adams would tell me, that we have to love, white people have to love black people and black people have to love white people. Hunter says that's dangerous. That's a high bar of freedom. And freedom is
dangerous because somehow it's undisciplined and it can't be, it's like like I say, what was that? I'm sorry?
It can bleed into hate, and freedom is freedom is about building a world with people who respect, and you can be over there and I can be over here, but freedom is about that.
Sounds like a pretty dry world, doesn't it?
Well, it's a world of politics, which leaves space for a world of love and in the private.
So it all goes together, in other
yes,
words.
It all goes.
You can't have a completely political system, right? Because there's no room for human beings in that.
Exactly.
Correct?
Exactly.
Well, I mean, the answer sort of staring us in the face, isn't it? About what we do next. Trying to be fair people, trying to love across ethnic, racial boundaries, gird up your loins, jump in, right? Jump in and don't be afraid to fail. Fail means that somebody might punch you in the face. I mean, that's how I've lived. That's how I understand it. I don't know. I'm imagining most people on this call have that experience every day. I got a letter from a young classical dancer today. I know her because she just participated in something I did with the Taiwanese artist Ming Wei. And Sarah Mearns, those of you who know ballet, know that she's a star at New York City Ballet. And she had done this very beautiful ritual with 8 other dancers. She wrote me today saying she was very moved by what we did last week, but she was one of 2 white people involved in the project. And she said that a lot of people have been saying to her, and she said for the wrong reasons, you should be on stage with a person of color now. And she said, I didn't want to, because I think it's a trendy thing to do, which Mr. Kunru speaks about, right? You got to show your bona fides, you got to do your virtue signaling. And she was asking, but could you tell me, like, I want to be able to talk about these issues, but I'm a white woman. It's a beautiful white woman, blonde hair. She's got the body of a ballerina. And she said, people think that it's all easy for me, that it's not. Could you tell me how to do it? How to do it? How can she speak her truth in this moment? And here you're asking, how can she participate in the common world at this moment? Is that what you're saying, Robert?
Yeah.
Roger?
Yeah.
I know. And yeah, how do we do it? For those of us who have the scars, you just say, get out there and fucking do it.
Yeah.
Which means love who you want to love. Make friends with who you want to make friends with. Don't let your curiosity be blunted. Taste what you want to taste. Bear the burden of being called a narcissist and self-involved. That's another thing about artists. They're oftentimes narcissistic and self-involved. And yet, when it's good, it's worth it.
Well, Bill, thank you. That's a great way for us to transition and dive in now to opening it up to a Q&A. Sky, did you want to start us off, or did you pick a question from the chat?
I actually have a Race and Revolution team member that wants to start us off.
Okay.
If I may.
Go for it.
on blast right now. Tobias Hess, I believe you had a question.
Hi, thank you so much. This has been so beautiful and moving. I really appreciate it.
Mm.
I heard earlier in your talk a mention of the kind of ways that these progressive organizations become cliches of themselves, and that's something that I feel like I've been thinking a lot recently as we try to put together this lecture series. But I also heard you critique kind of putting everything on capitalism, maybe if it's overly simplistic, but does this move towards, you know, branding everything, making something a project as simplifying as white fragility, is that not the product of capitalism on a certain level? And if so, would that not be a place to look for reform or revolution, as so we can have these deeper conversations in public?
So you mean going back to the old saw of let's get rid of the captains of industry and let's bring them down, and everyone should share the same, participate in the marketplace and so on. Is that what you're saying? That,
I don't know about the alternative, but it does seem like our consumer branding culture seems to be hindering us from having these types of conversations more frequently. And I'm wondering if you would agree with that.
Well, yeah, it took me a long time to be sitting in a house that I own. Now you realize I'm coming from potato pickers, and came and lo and behold, the greatest insult to my mother and father was, just when I get to college, what do I study? Modern dance? Boy, what's wrong with you? You know, we people, we got to feed ourselves, right? So we were just dying to participate in capitalism. And now I own stuff. I drive an Audi, you know? So you want me to come here and now make a lie out of myself and say, no, I want comfort. And if capitalism can give it to me, I will go for it. I'd like it to have capitalism with conscience. I don't want to hurt people, but you know, of course, by the clothes you're wearing, the clothes I'm wearing, probably somebody is hurt from it. So I'm going to do this thing which artists do to you, because I can't give you a clean-cut answer and say, yes, that's it. That's the solution, right? Get rid of capitalism, because I'd be a lie if I said it. And art needs to be subsidized. So those of you who are in this new horizontal future, where everybody is, I guess, middle class, will there be room for things that are exclusive? Things that take a lot of money, a lot of time to make? Will you pay for it? Will you pay for them like rich people do now? I don't think so. So I can't give you a better answer than that. Be honest. Be honest. You're a product of this thing. Capitalism is like the milk from your mother's tit. It came in with you breathing your first breath.
Bill, you've made art for I don't know how many years. And some of those you owned your own house and an Audi and had your own company, and some you didn't.
Oh, many times you didn't.
How do you think, what's the difference between art being made by Bill T. Jones at the top and Bill T. Jones 30 years ago at, I don't want to say the bottom, but at a different state?
Close to the bottom, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how, you said something now which I thought was really important, right? Which is that art takes time, money, exclusivity. I assume a lot of that.
It can.
Okay. I heard you say that. I mean, that's what I'm asking.
No, it's true. It's true. I did say that. Yeah.
So to what extent is that a necessary, aspect of art today? And what would happen if you were back, where you were 30 years ago? Would you'd be doing art too? What's the difference?
Well, I think 30 years ago, it was a young guy that was all appetite. That's what he was. And he was expressing in a wonderful way, but he didn't really understand much about the way things worked. He didn't understand much about the way he worked. The person now has the same questions, and I must say the same doubt, but he does understand things better. He understands how to keep a 10-member group of dancers together. He understands how to fundraise for a $5 million a year organization. He understands how to find time to read this German Jewish woman, Hannah Arendt, at a time when people are out in the street wanting change, and he's thinking about thinking. So there's a different temperature, but he's always looking for revelation. He's always looking for, oh my God, that's so beautiful. The two guys still have that in common. But the second one is the one that the young one wanted to be.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you. There's two ways to ask questions. One is by putting in the chat, and the other is raising your hands. I see Ayala Laser has a hand raised. Ayala, you want to ask a question?
Yeah. Does it have to be inside, outside? Capitalism, socialism? It looks like the queer community, that's, my son has educated me on that, was the most successful of any freedom groups that I could, or categories that I know today, that they just did. They refuse to blend into mainstream, just like the LGBT official group has been doing and desiring, but to stay outside. Now, it is, you're right, Bill, it's impossible to not be a participant in a system. It's like a web, a spider web capitalism. Right, so we are at a certain point on the web, but isn't it still possible to take the opportunity, because you are a member of more than one category of outsiders?
Well, okay, I see, I'm not quite sure I understand the inside and outside. I don't know if I agree there is an inside and outside.
Well, outside is big, the opportunity that they have, they see themselves as outsider in rejecting as much as possible consumerism, racism, genderism, sexual orientation, any categories, binary thinking.
Excuse me, are these people living in this country?
Well, my son and his community in Berlin, Germany.
Okay, that's another example. Except why don't you move to some place where people have nothing? Why do you stay in that? Because if you're there, you are part of the oppressor. The very air you breathe, the gas in your car, all those things, it is somebody is paying for that. And if you really want that kind of purity, how can you stay there? How can you stay there? Let's be real. I mean, I think that's an illusion that there's an inside and outside, and you can go there, quote, you can be off the grid. I think it's almost an illusion to be off the grid right now. Are you still on the internet?
Well, the people who start with nothing don't have the means to communicate, to express, or even to be free. The freedom, it doesn't start with nothing. When you have nothing, you don't have the privilege of being free.
Well, you're talking to people. My parents were potato pickers. I know something about this, right? I know about having one pair of shoes and you run naked, run barefoot all summer, and then you have a shit pair of shoes in the fall. So I do know something about it. But those people, I don't know who your son's colleagues are, but I bet those people who are really living that way because they have to, they want to live this way. They want to live like everybody on the inside wants to live. I don't know that this is a mistake that radicals have made. Tatlin, right? He wanted to, in Russia, he wanted to find the art form that was going to get rid of all romanticism and all Tsarist imprint. And then he found out that the people actually wanted Giselle. What do we do with that? The people that we're trying to...
That's very cynical and might be true. Might be true.
Let me take it from me. Poor black people don't want to behave like poor black people. They want to be black. They want, well, look at what black consumerism is. Look at what poor people consume. Are you using them as your example? You're going to identify with them?
All right.
Okay.
Can we,
I don't want to dominate.
yeah,
I
we're
know.
going to move on.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's a good and sticky question. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ingie John has a question, and then Aspen Britton, and those two. But let's start with Ingie. Can you turn your video on, ask your question?
Yes, I just turned my video. I'm sorry for the noise because there's a construction going on. So my question is that I agree that art can allow you an experience that goes beyond like rational consensus or agreements, like Habermas kind of thing. But one of the pitfalls of Butlerian like affect feeling approach to politics is the danger of purity of sentimentalism, in that you have to feel what I feel and then we can do something together. So there's a lot of positive in that, but at the same time, because it really focuses on transcending my feeling to you, I'm just wondering whether can I really know what Black people feel or what other marginalized people feel without them telling me through a story, or if I read Toni Morrison or that kind of book, I can understand. But I don't know, what are ways to communicate that feeling?
You know, when you speak this way, I appreciate the sincerity of what you're trying to say, but it is so chilling to me. You poor people have an experience that I can't have. What is it? Was it Terence, the Roman philosopher, said, "All that is human does not surprise me"? I mean, I don't get it. I mean, that when if you're white people saying, "I don't understand what it feels like to be Black," well, I know somewhere in your life you feel somebody has their foot on your fucking neck. You're a woman. You're a woman. You're a woman. Right?
Obviously, I'm also not a white person, right? So
I know you're not. I know.
So I'm just trying to say that sometimes it's not really difficult. It's not really easy to make people feel what I feel.
Okay, well, artists, first of all, shouldn't be trying to make you feel anything. Good artists don't do that. No, good artists make something. It's like creating a child, a personality, and then it interacts with the world. There's a limit to what the creator can really do. And if it is, there's propaganda that they're making then. If you're making it.
No, but I thought that the art was that power. I mean, if I write stuff, I don't think I can really deliver that kind of feeling to audience. So, and I thought that that's really the power of art, and that's why one of the reasons why a lot of writers, and including Hannah Arendt, is fascinated by the power of art. And so I was wondering whether there's a way where we can appreciate what art can do. Art can do.
I think it was I appreciate it, but you were saying something about, I don't know how to communicate the feeling of being a Black person, right? Are you Korean, Chinese? What are you?
Yeah, Korean.
Do you know how to express the feeling of being Korean?
Well,
could you? I
guess, pardon?
Could you? I mean, could you like sing, move, tell me a story?
About being Korean?
Yeah. Could you?
I guess so.
Well, that's your experience. I'm saying that's what's inside of you. You know, Toni used to also say to me that at her classes, she would, when the kids would come in and try to write these exotic characters, she said, you know, write something you know. That was her great teaching. And then she said, try to write something you know, but now try to write somebody that you can't even imagine. All right, and these imaginative exercises are what art is about. How do we get out of the identity that we have that comes with these bodies? So I embrace you, my sister, but I would tell you, be brave. Your feelings are valid. You don't have to express Black women. A Korean woman will do fine if she's real, if she's deep enough.
Thank you. And thank you, Inji. That was great. And I want to follow up on Inji's question, Bill. You just said be brave. And what you meant by that is be brave to express your feelings.
Don't worry what's going to happen.
Yeah. I was having dinner with a scholar of Mahatma Gandhi's work yesterday. And we were talking about these questions. And I said, that in many ways, I've come to see the last 7 years since Ferguson and the current Black Lives Matter movement as my coming really to change and understand that for many people, especially many Black people, other people as well, there's a feeling of not belonging, of not being, of outsiderness and oppression. And this scholar said, well, what Gandhi would say is, your feelings are wrong. Be brave and have the courage to see yourself as someone of dignity and don't give in to those feelings. And I said, I'm not sure everyone, feels that's some people have to be more brave than others, and that's unequal. And I think that's part of what's going on in the world is people are saying that. So I'm just wondering, do we ever say to people, look, I hear your feelings, but they're wrong? Where do you come down on that?
Well, that's bad psychoanalytic practice, isn't it? You just don't do that. You don't say it would be so much, we would be getting along much better if you were different. Right. You just don't do that. Particularly if you want to try to make progress. There are times when I feel like I have to stare at somebody down and say, this is what I believe. I was on the phone with my family. Many of them are fundamentalist Christians yesterday, and we're trying to build something. And I was talking about, I said, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in Jesus. That's a hard thing to say in that environment. And what's more, I want to say to them, and I don't know if any of them in this call tonight, is our call yesterday was so warm and fuzzy, but it turned into what I call superstition. And we felt good talking about Jesus and the spirit that was in the room and so on. If I say I don't believe that, that's really chilling for my ethnic identity, my family. If you don't believe that, then are you really Black? Well, I guess I'm not. I think I am, though.
Yeah.
I think I am. I don't know, Roger, what Gandhi would mean by that exactly, but I think you got to be able to do that. You got to be able to tell people that what you're feeling is not. Now that's difficult. What you're feeling is wrong. No. Never say what you're feeling is wrong, but you got to tell them that's wrong-headed. You got to be able to show them. And one thing that I do, I'm a cheat because I know how to work a room. And now that's a crappy thing to say, but it's a reality for performers.
And for teachers.
Pardon?
And for teachers.
Oh, good for you. Good for you. Admit it then. There's a performing element to it. But I'm saying I know I want to go for the jugular. I oftentimes start singing something my mother taught me, Negro spiritual, something that comes from people who are dirt poor or oppressed. And you bring that into the room with real passion, and then people either are uncomfortable and they can't deal with it, or they move in closer. Already then, we're having this exchange. There is a we. Artists can make a we. It may not be a lasting we, but they can make a we in that moment. That's what I have found is what's political about the most emotional performances. Making a we.
Thank you. Aspen Brinton had a question. Aspen, you want to turn your video on and ask your question?
I think the video's on. I've just unmuted my working.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, thanks so much for this interesting discussion. I wanted to go back to the hell no moment. The hell no moment being of interest to me. I'm teaching a course on art and politics this semester. I also work on dissidents and activists. and the relationship of art to that. I've often had the question of whether it is that art can be a grounding, a way of planting seeds, a way of, in a sense, kind of fertilizing the precursor, what comes before the hell no moment, right? That it opens and that it opens a way of perceiving the world, and then there's a kind of rupture that happens that is on the ground of something prior that was absorbed perhaps from an artistic experience or from a change in a way of thinking that an artist.
But you're not saying that artists are the only people that do this, of course.
No, I don't think so. But like a non-artistic person has a certain experience with a work of art, with a performance, with a film, with whatever. And there's a kind of rupture created that makes the hell no moment more likely in a way.
Mm-hmm. I'm not quite sure we're saying the same thing, but of course, I think an anecdote about a man who, on the subway, there was a tall man who was literally attacking another man with an 8-inch knife. The police, for various reasons that this program explained, would not come out of there at the end of the subway car. But there, everybody else rushed to one end of the car, and there was one man who wouldn't run away. So the man is on the floor fighting for his life, covered with blood. This guy jumps onto the back of the other guy with the knife, and together, the both of them wrestle it down. Now, someone says, "You were such a hero." Well, he didn't feel himself to be a hero, but what was the hell no? What was it? I won't let this happen. Can we get together on that? And he was not an artist, but I think that's what I think. Now, am I telling myself a lie here about that? About what is the impulse, really a heroic impulse, an antisocial, anti-intuitive impulse, which says this cannot stand? Is that what you mean by a hell no moment, or the moment before the hell moment?
Right, it's more the work that goes on in a person's head and in a person's thinking to make that hell no moment more possible, right?
You mean the work that every parent has to do when they have a child, and teaching them that they belong where they are, and that they are a loving person, and that they demonstrate love every day, and they demonstrate courage, everything. You mean the work that a parent has to do with a child?
But can art do that work? Can art do that work?
Yeah, I suppose it can. You know what I say to some of my friends right now? That I don't say to my friends. I have some really powerful, creative choreographer associates. And when the AIDS crisis happened and people were dying left and right, I came out of it saying, I wish those friends of mine who are supreme artists, I wish them a great tragedy. I wish them that something came along and hit them side of their goddamn head, knocked them flat, so that when they stood up, that would be a revelation. Now, if that's what you mean.
Yeah, and I mean, in some sense, right? That moment of revelation, I think we're putting it in slightly different words, but right.
Well, I'm purposely being dramatic with it. I want you to know what the stakes are, what you're talking about. Can it prepare you for the moment?
Yeah.
Can it prepare you for this moment that we're going into right now?
And can art hit you on the side of the head like that in a legitimate way?
I don't know. People try. I have done it.
Is it something you're trying to do?
I don't think I was trying to do it. But when I made work while I was bleeding, literally, and afraid that I was going to die, I know that work had something desperate about it that moved people's hearts. Now, is that the same thing as a Zen slap? I'm not quite sure. Yeah. Well, you know a piece called Still Here that I made about people living with life-threatening illness? If you don't, your students might appreciate it because it made a lot of noise. And I remember we were touring all over.
I saw a clip of it on YouTube, yeah.
Yes, well, on YouTube. Oh my God. Okay, well, everything comes to YouTube, doesn't it? There's a woman who approached me one night afterwards, and I was saying, quoting Maya Angelou, who says, if you want hope, you already have it. And this woman came from, because you were talking to people who were dying, literally, life-threatening illness. And she came up to me, she said, well, what if life itself is a disease? And I saw this as an extremely depressed person. Now that, you're talking clinical depression like that, I don't know what would give that woman a way to have a hell no moment. I don't know. But for most of us, I think we just need something to be snatched away from us brutally, and we want it so bad that we say, hell no, I will have that.
Yeah. Thank you. And thanks, Aspen. Sky, you said you had a question. Why don't you jump on in?
I did have a question. I actually had a couple questions, so I'm going to try and choose just one. But I wanted to ask if you had heard about activism, performativity and activism.
What do you mean by that question, my love?
I think I mean...
Have I heard about it?
I think I don't know how active you are on Instagram or other social media platforms in such a way.
Do you know identity politics? That
yes,
term?
Of course, yeah.
I am considered one of the architects of identity politics in art.
So you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you mean. Oh, it's not, and the aesthetes would say it's not about art. It's about politics. That used to be the biggest put down, right?
It's incredibly untrue.
Well, yeah, now no one, your hip woke generation thinks that's, but there was a time when that was the ethos. There was the Apollonian up here that transcended this world, right? And then there was the Dionysian, or even, I'm not sure what you call it, the artiste engagé, as the French say, that are engaged in this world. And you have to be very careful if you stepped over a certain line, because the academy would cut you down, cut you off at the knees. This is, you're just trying to make us feel sorry for you as a Black person.
But this
right?
exists aesthetically now, though.
I'm sorry?
I think
What's that?
the same gatekeeping exists aesthetically now, though. Like
You
there
think
is
so?
an aesthetic. Yeah, I think there's an aesthetic to anonymity in one's social, in one's activism, because like if the way that you're presenting your information, or those you're quote unquote trying to fight for, or the way that you're presenting the way that you care about something, whether that be via like Instagram posts or Facebook and others, if you kind of slip too far into showing your own bias in this aesthetic work that you're making to express information, then you get cut down at the knees. Then it's not.
So I don't understand in a work of art how you can slip too far into showing your subjective bias. I mean, that's what it is, isn't it? I mean, that's what art is.
It should be, but that's the problem in between, like in the process of like activism and performativity online. Or I mean, this is kind of my own.
Oh, I see. I thought you meant activism in performance, and you're saying activism in performativity online.
I think they exist together, though, and I think that's why I wanted to ask you.
Right. See, I'm not an Instagram child, and I barely understand it. I don't. There's when I go down the Instagram hole, which I don't do very much. I feel like there's so much one after another that nothing. It's very hard for it to sink deep into my heart, which is what I want. But you guys, your generation, you live there all the time, right? You can handle like bits of stimulation, 100 of them an hour and what have you, and still be ready for a, I don't know, whatever you're ready for. Is that true?
Human beings can't. I think it seems as though we can because we are the ones producing it, but I think honestly, like, if you are the father of identity politics, we are only your children.
I wouldn't say I'm the father, but I was definitely one of those first there. When I was a little boy, about 12 years old, I went back to the place I was born, Bunnell, Florida. I'm sitting on the steps with my two old aunties, Aunt Maddie and Aunt Purity Roger. Aunt Maddie said to me, Billy, you ain't gonna do like your brother Irie did. He went up north and married a girl, because if you marry a girl, you can't come down here and visit us no more. When I was a little boy, about 12 years old, I received a little white card in the mail, 114-38-2646. This piece was made in 1977, and I'm dancing the most important engagement of my life on the stage in Central Park. So every time the word white is said, it's dropped out. And it seems like a story, but then at the last part, when I said, Auntie, I love you, I'm stripping my clothes off. I'm stripping right down to a pair of green briefs, right? Jock. And so what was being said? I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. What was it? So I'm saying, if an artist, if you brave enough, just throw it out there with as much passion behind you, and it makes its own logic in the world. I believe that. Art can change the air around it. I don't guarantee what it's going to change it into, but it can change it. And performativity, yeah.
I think I got it in terms of the transience of that too. Like if art can, you said yourself, like like the disco song, how
just Disco Inferno, burn baby
disco,
burn.
burn baby burn. My mom played that for me all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But how we have been so divorced from like the original meaning of that song, what it was created from, and time went on, and even as you're saying, as like art can change the air around you.
Are you a Beyonce fan by any chance?
I think I have to be.
Well, I know, I think she's major, but did you see Black is King?
I haven't seen Black is King yet, which...
Well, you know, I appreciate the woman. I know what she's trying to do, but when you take so many cultures from across Africa and you stage manage them and you custom them and the locations, everything, and then you do one after another, I suppose I said, well, the Instagram generation is digging this, but I want to know specifically where this motif came from. Why do they do it? Whatever. But it is now everything is an image of something. Because I think your generation trusts the uber mind. Is that what it is? We'll all figure out what is being said here in this common world. I think that's what Instagram is. Isn't Instagram sort of implying that we have what Hannah Arendt calls a common world?
Oh my God.
Possibly. I hadn't thought about it like that, but...
Well, that's how we justify it, those of us who worry about your minds turning into soup, saying, oh, no, they're connected on another level that we could never understand.
That is what you started out with by asking me if I was able to take in all of this information in ways that you couldn't.
And I mean, so Beyonce is justified in doing Black culture in bits like this. And everything is like a magazine shoot. And everything is glamorous.
The issue.
Well, there are the people younger than you right now who will never understand how you could have ever doubted that she was. She is the new reality. She is the reality. And bless her, you know, but it scares me sometimes because I'm so slow. I'm slow. I need time.
I think we all need time though. And I think you're very right to be afraid. Because there were also, I think, what I think is also happening in my generation is that we're dealing with eternal ephemerality. Nothing is sacred, nothing stays for a very long time due to either gentrification or time. And things are going a lot, as you're saying, things are going a lot faster for us than they have for you. And I think even though that's the way that we've grown, I think we also do look to the past in a way, especially to identity politics and creating boundaries of community, non-physically being digital, in ways that you had it physically, that you could.
You mean like Black Twitter?
Yes, things like Black Twitter, things like Black queer Twitter, things like all the ways that we can't necessarily engage with each other as physically as we used to.
Even then, you know, it was hard. Even then it was hard. You understand? It was, even though people were talking about living classless and free, it was still unspoken. It was a big deal when you walked down the street holding the hand of somebody who was a different race. And if you were of the same gender, even in the rock world, you know, I know David Bowie and gender fuck and all that stuff, but it wasn't real. It wasn't real. So it is, you probably, and I'm going to say this, I think you're living in the freest time. I think you realize you can find your community now, and you can get a healthy conversation going on. We were taught that we should be talking to the whole universe all the time. I think you folks seem content that you have your community, your like-minded folks who burrow in together. Is that true?
I would think that we do speak to the universe all the time, or at least I think that's the way that I feel that way at my age and what I do with my social media. I think it feels very, there's a lot of pressure because it feels like I need to say because I'm not just speaking to the people I love. The people I love make sense to other people that they love. The people that I want to love me may eventually look at my page and see what there is there for me, what worth I have through what I'm presenting. So it does in a way feel like I am, and I think most of us maybe feel this way as well, that we are speaking to the world every time that we speak.
Well, good, because I thought you were satisfied with being in silos and hermetic, you know? Because like I say, my family, I think many of them live in worlds where they don't have white people in them. They might work with white people, but no, I don't watch a show like that. I don't, because I want to see a show people look like me. And they're very confident in saying it. So you can imagine it makes conversation difficult when, like, I'm a Eurocentrist. My references are oftentimes white references. So if you're in a world where you think you're only interested in a new singer if they are brown-skinned, you're only interested in this idea in the news if it's a Black person giving it, which is everyone's right now, right? Isn't that free at last meant? You know, that we would be allowed to live in a gated community is free as well, isn't it?
I think the idea though is that it's a shift of power though. Because like all of us easily have access to Eurocentricity or more easily have access to people who are white, regardless of what they may be doing. I think what I often see, or at least amongst maybe the circles that I'm a part of as well, is that this now gives us the opportunity and the choice to engage in work and people that wouldn't be brought up to the surface otherwise. And
when you limit the community, is that what you're saying?
That is true.
Which is what I think was going with the Komaki collective, right? That was a radical feminist collective they wanted women to be together so they can find out really what womanhood was, correct?
True.
Yeah.
We're, yeah, in a lot of intersections, but yes.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you for that.
I'm sorry that wasn't much of a question, but thank you for sharing.
No, but it was nice and sticky.
Yeah.
The way we like it, isn't it?
Excellent, Bill. Fran Lemprecht has a question, and we're gonna maybe have one more after that. We'll see.
Thank you.
Fran, hey, how you doing, my love? How you doing?
Thank you for the conversation. I really enjoy it. And I want to ask, going back to love and politics and Hannah Arendt's claim or maybe idea that love doesn't belong into politics. How about beauty? Could politics be a little bit more enticing, or participating in politics, if they were a little bit more beautiful, or if we
or you're not talking about bodies on people and their faces and so on, are you? Or you mean their ideas were more beautiful?
I'm not sure. I think I'm talking about all kinds of beauty, like maybe bodies, maybe rituals, maybe the general aesthetics of the political layout.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say that maybe in some ways, elegance and refinement of line, it being a line of argument, be the line of address, hair, person's body, what have you, is always somehow they're bracing. It sharpens. I don't know what, it sounds like a terrible elitist thing to say, but I think that's what you mean by beauty, right? Or do we mean beauty as being sublime, awe verging on terror? That is a great political idea, can be beautiful, like a mathematical equation, right? And I think that's important. But no, I'm not quite sure that sensual beauty is so transient that I don't think that politics needs it. Politics needs something else, though. It needs what makes a mesmerizing speaker, mesmerizing thinker, and somebody that I can trust. Is that a beautiful person? I think that's a beautiful person. Magnetic personality, trustworthy, and their beauty, and that kind of beauty I need. Now, could they be disfigured? That can even make them more beautiful.
But I feel like you're putting it towards the individual now. I'm trying to stay in the political sphere because,
well,
like,
you know how sloppy I am with that now, don't you? Right? But please, you're saying it's political sphere. If we should, how say it one more time?
Well, I maybe it's like a general question that also Roger can chime in. Like, would Arendt say beauty doesn't belong into politics, or is there a way to? I mean, like we often hear, oh, it's so ugly. Politics are really ugly. So I'm just trying to think on many different levels how politics could become more beautiful so that we want to go there and see it and participate like we go and see art.
Let me, I'll add what I take to be the Arendtian aspect of this question, then Bill, let you respond.
Please go for it.
Yeah, I mean, political acts for Arendt have to be acts that stand out from the ordinary. We all do things every day, right? The acts that we have to respond to are those acts that shine and catch us in some way because they're original, because they are awful, because they are great. And so, from my point of view, Fran, the question you raise is one that borders on the love question, as you said before, because beauty raises the question of greatness, and it raises the question of horror and evil, because great acts are often acts that are outside of the norms, outside of what we expect. And those acts can be transformative and revolutionary. For example, I Have a Dream, which was a beautiful and extraordinary and unexpected statement, which has had an impact. But they can also be, really ugly statements that can be criminal or seen as criminal or not. And so when you ask for beauty, yes, Arendt says politics requires the ambition of beauty, the ambition of immortality, the ambition of originality. And yet, as a result, there's a kind of risk to it.
And it's very telling, isn't it, that beauty has, I don't know if it's back again, but in the visual arts world, in the higher echelons of it, there was a real distrust of what was called beauty. And they said beauty meant something was bankrupt, and excuse the misogyny here, but beauty is like a beautiful escort. They are there to decorate. Beauty decorates, and then beauty it can be destroyed. Get another one. Beauty is already. This was a bias, I believe, against the beautiful in art. Now the beautiful in politics. Yeah. I think we need another word, though. I don't know if we need beauty. I think we need. Is it profound or the?
You like greatness, Bill?
Pardon?
Do you like greatness?
Oh gosh, yeah. I know I'd like it. We all want it, but it's been sort of used a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
When did you last read a great book, Roger? It was a great book. Do you dare even say that about it being great? Well, I think we're all a little cautious now, aren't we, about saying something is great?
We are, and that's for our end. That's the fear of greatness and the fear to stand out, which is part and parcel of the modern drive for equality and a fear of greatness, is for her the death of politics.
I wish she was with us now for Instagram culture. I wish she could have taken that question that Sky was just, how does it really work? She's a European who really believes in history and the patrimony of ideas and so on. And the fact that she just says, I think in German, quote, she says, right? This She loved America, but she left too soon. It got really good when finally democracy got what it was looking for. And to some people, it's terrifying. It's frightening. Yeah, greatness. Yeah.
Let me let a question come in. Bob Meyerson has a question. Bob, do you want to come on?
Hey, Bob.
Hello. This goes back really to the opening of the discussion when I was hearing the term revolution bandying about, and I knew some of these people who were involved in that Nyack heist.
The Brinks robbery.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And my concern is that for the most part, revolutions belong to the people who are armed and aren't exactly our people. I live out here in western Minnesota, where it's Trump territory, and these people are armed to the teeth. They've been armed for generations, and I don't fear them. But, you know, when it comes to this dispute about the election results, I know they have more arms than people like I do.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, it troubles me to hear people who are out east or in the major cultural centers talking about revolution. They're just sitting pigeons. And yeah, Gandhi can talk about nonviolent revolution and going into the streets. And that certainly worked in the 1960s. But I wonder if it works in
is it
to
Bob?
be very careful.
Is it your name is Bob, right, sir? Bob, right?
Yes.
But aren't you moved by the picture of the line? There's Tiananmen Square, of course, where the one person stood and did this little dance with the tank. But the other one where there's a young woman, there's a line of people with guns, and she walks up and she puts a flower in the barrel of a gun. That was very, very powerful. It moved a lot of people. And if revolution doesn't, I'm saying that the force and violence does not always win the day. Don't you have to ultimately win hearts and minds for it to really stick? And hearts and minds, they need to, this is back to what Hannah was saying about something great to aspire to, or something that's moving and recognizable, fragile, not managed by Hollywood or a fashion team, but something that really seems to be coming out of some lyrical part of the person. I think that's it. I know what you're saying about the guns. I have the same fear. However, I don't want to lose track of somebody having an idea that could be nonviolent. And will I recognize it when it's there and I support it? What about you? Would you recognize it?
Well, I remember back in, I think it was 1967, African-American friend of mine, Joe Brown, appeared in I think it was a New York Times photo where it was the March on Washington, and he was putting a flower in the barrel of a gun of one of the National Guards. Well, you know, we can argue back and forth about whether that was effective or not. But to the extent that gets this argument to the point of, you know, revolution. A lot of people are talking revolution. I'll tell you, very few revolutions have succeeded. And in our case, what can a revolution be other than the affirmation of the American Constitution?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. You know, you remind me of Marlon Riggs, Black filmmaker, who made a film called Tongues Untied, I believe. And was it Tongues Untied or Black is Blank? And he said, it's radical for Black men to love Black men. So it's almost something like that what you're saying. What is the radical thing to do that seems counterintuitive to the power structure? How can you actually love radically. I know that's what it sounds to you. You sound like a hard-nosed lefty there, but it sounds a little sentimental. But I think we have to always leave room for that. The guns will not win everything. The guns will not. And the children are watching. You have to remember that. The kids are watching. What are we telling them, and how we deal with power, and how we deal with our distress? What are we showing them? Do they know how to sing, dance? Do they know how to write? Do they know how to express something? Know how to use language? How do we do something other than what Hollywood shows us? And God knows I love action movies. Someone gets blown away or beat up. This is where that other part comes in. I respect you, sir. I know what you're saying. They have a lot of guns. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? The us and the them.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Bill, there's one or two more questions. Do you have time or energy? Or
I'm all right. I'm all right. I smell dinner cooking downstairs. I hope you all are having dinner as well. My companion is at it down there. It's always exciting.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, we'll do one more, and then I'll see if I can give a final one. But Rob, you have a question. You want to jump in?
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for the talk. It's been great.
Love the hat, Rob.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to kind of get back to maybe one question we were talking about early on, and also something about how you approached art, and try to see whether we can reconcile those two things. So the first is how do we talk about this kind of complex situation that we're in? You said how do we find a simple slogan that can kind of, give us an understanding or access into the situation with maybe revolution that we're talking about now, where we know we're fighting against something, but not fighting for something. We have this concept of we that is kind of ambiguous, but it's both close to us and far away. So there's this kind of situation we're finding ourselves in. But you also mentioned that you should kind of love what you love. You should taste what you want to taste. There's this kind of selfish, narcissistic, artistic mind that approaches things. And I want to see whether you when you're creating art, you reconcile these two, this we-ness and I-ness when you approach art.
Yeah, who are you, man? That's a wonderful question. That's great. That's great. Every artist has to deal with both those things at one instant. At once, you're in the room, for me, a director, and you are seeing things from your point of view. And then you have this thing called your imagined audience, literally where they're sitting, how they might receive it. And if you put two elements together, what this might mean. We're doing that all inside and outside all the time in the art process. And it's oftentimes the most demoralizing feeling when you fail by your standards. You fail. But then when you hit it, you feel like you could fly. You feel like you could fly. And when somebody comes up to you and they're moved by what you do, it's nice if they're critics, but it doesn't have to be a critic. They're moved by you, you get this kind of temporary vindication. And I don't know how you live, but I live always feeling unworthy, an imposter, a fake. And someday they're going to find out that I ain't got no talent, right? But then when you actually do something that connects, for a while, you hold the head up higher. Is that what you're asking in a way? How do you do it? Can I turn that impulse into something that we could put on the front of New York Live Arts? What would be the slogan about that look, that search, is what I thought you might have been asking me. What do you want to try again?
Yeah, well, I think I liked how you framed it, and that when you are in the creative process, there's always this kind of maybe testing the waters, where you create something in your own space and you put it out there and you see what happens. And sometimes it hits and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, and they tell us that great geniuses like Mozart was able to just start here and write it all out, and it's a masterpiece. Or George Balanchine, he knows the music so well, he has the answers come in. Dear, you stand here, you do that, you do this, and presto, it's genius. Most of us, that's not the case. Most of us, it's trial and error, and a lot of failure. Yes, what did Dylan say? And there's no success like failure, and failure is no success at all. Isn't he great?
Well, thank you for answering the question.
Thank you for the question. So Roger, should we pack it in?
Yeah, we'll pack it in, Bill. This has been great. Go get some of Bjorn's good cooking, and I'm gonna go get some of my takeout.
Oh.
I'm in New York. Great to see you. Thank you so much for talking with us. For everybody, we actually have another lecture in this Race and Revolution series on Thursday at 6 o'clock. So coming up this week. Kirk Johnson, who has written a book on members of the African American Tea Party movement.
Oh my God.
He's going to be speaking along with one of those members, the African American Tea Party members, on Thursday, and speaking about what their views on race and revolution. He's a professor, and he's done this amazing, I think, really fantastic sociological, anthropological book about the African American Tea Party and who these folks are and why they do what they do. And so I think it'll be an interesting and we talked about building a we. What is a we amongst white people, amongst Americans, amongst Black people? The plurality is there, and we're going to hear a really interesting conversation about someone who has strong views about what does it mean to be an American as a Black American Tea Party member. So that'll be Thursday at 6 o'clock. So hope you guys can join us for that. Join me now in clapping and thank you for Bill T. Jones. Amazing. Always.
Thank you for your attention, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
This was amazing. Thank you
Good.
so much.
Good night now. Love you all. Bye-bye.
Bill, thanks a lot.
You.
Bless.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you all for coming. I see Christopher Carter's iPad is still here. If you can hear me. Well, it's okay. All right.